Thank you very much for that, Sophie. We have a fabulous topic to debate for you. Just going to flesh it out for you a little bit. We're talking about economic empowerment for women, but from a slightly different angle about procurement and supply chains. Here's some stats. The World Bank estimates that businesses owned by women make up 35% of the formal economy, but receive just 1% of public and private spending, which is clearly an obstacle to expanding women's entrepreneurship and empowerment. So in 2019, we asked the question again, what can be done to level the playing field for women? Let me introduce our wonderful panel of speakers for you. First up, Feroz Sayegh, who is Vice President of Global Supply Chain, Global Supply Network and Business Services at P&G. Anne Gabrielle Halbonner, who is member of the Management Board at Publicis Groupe. Mara Marinaki, who is Principal Advisor on Gender, Women, Peace and Security at European External Action Service for the European Union. And Alexandra Mars, Founder and CEO of EPIC Foundation. Welcome to you all. Feroz, let me start with you, because last year you were here, you launched a fantastic initiative, Daring Circle, Women for Business, and the aim was trying to establish women's economic empowerment through supply chain diversity and gender responsiveness in procurement. Well, since then, we've seen a tremendous research piece that's been developed. You've been actioning this program, and you've brought on board, of course, a number of other key stakeholders, from Publicis to L'Oreal to BNP Paribas, among others. So just talk us through the journey you've had over the past year and some of the key takeaways from this Women's Forum report.
Thank you, Karen. I'm really happy to be back. It has been literally 12 months on this stage. You know, I had the honor and I was humbled to stand next to Chiara to announce Women for Business, Daring Circle. And for me, and of course, for many of us in this network that started with Publicis, L'Oréal, BNP Paribas, and P&G, I would call it the nucleus of a commitment and the desire to drive intentionally women economic empowerment. So the starting point for us, if you think and you step back and you say, okay, why us and why now? We're big companies. Okay, and we believe we have to be a force of good and a force of change. We touch people's lives in many ways in the services we provide, the brands, you know, we give to the consumer in all walks of life. Hence, we have first a moral obligation. When you think about women economic empowerment, you step back and you say, well, it's about equality, gender equality. Gender equality, first, it's a moral obligation. So that's doing what's right. But equally important from a business perspective, the business opportunity is huge. You know, just to reflect, if you have an equal opportunity for men and women entrepreneurs to participate in the current global economy at an equal footing, there is about 6% GDP growth opportunity. That's $5 trillion. That's big. So as this Daring Circle, we came together, and over the last 12 months, we looked into, okay, where to start. This is a journey of hundreds of years that dealt with this empowerment of women, and we're going to do today empowerment, you know, economic empowerment. It talks about gender equality, but in reality, there was gender inequality. So the journey is long, is not easy, but you have to start somewhere. So what we've done over the last 12 months, first is to just check the landscape. And the landscape today is all over the place, specifically in Europe. Unfortunately, there is very little system. And why I say system? Because it's about system change. But any system change need to start with an assessment, okay? So with A.T. Kearney and a lot of effort from all of us, you know, we surveyed, you know, many companies to understand the come from state. Now, if I look at this glass, it's half full, half empty. And our outcome was literally half full, half empty. The half full is that about 55% of the surveyed company are committed. You know, they started doing something about it, okay, which gave us an encouragement that we can start this journey of creating the environment for women to come forward, okay, and have that platform where she can tap into. The unfortunate thing, which is the glass half empty, is that about 50% of the companies said, not interested, not a priority. But let's not dwell there. Let's focus on the glass half full, okay? And since then, what we said, we have to create more urgency in the way we do this work. Why urgency? If you look back again about the numbers, that 1/3 of small and medium enterprises globally in the reported formal economy are owned or led by women entrepreneurs. But they only get 1% of big corporations like us or the public sector, only 1% of the spend. That's very minute. And why it's very important that we get this, urgency there, because the journey is long, it needs courageous leadership, and the outcome was a kind of a maturity model. I would like just to quickly see if I can bring it on stage. If not, well, it is over there. That, the starting point is, again, I do it in a funny way, but I mean it. If I want to lose weight, what do? The first thing I do, I buy a scale, okay, to see, how much I weigh before I start the journey. And for us, this is starting with the scale, understanding where are we? Are we at a stage where it's foundational, or are we embedded in the way we invite women entrepreneurs to engage? Okay? So over the last 12 months, that's what we did. And the call for action and the urgency is for more business leaders to come forward, because it takes that courage, it takes that determination.
It's a good way of putting, isn't it? The easy part is the way, and the harder part is trying to lose the weight by not eating as much and also going to the gym to work out. And Gabrielle, I want to move on to you, because you are part of the Daring Circle initiative too at Publicis, with your company, the third largest communications and advertising group in the world. Throwing its weight behind this move is quite a significant one, to try and level the playing field in supply chain. Just talk us through what needs to change now and why. Why is the timing so important too?
Well, I think we are at a moment where, for big company like Publicis, we have to deliver performance, and this is assessed each quarter when we release our numbers. At the same time, we have to transform, and to transform in a sustainable manner, in an environment that is extremely, extremely challenging. We all know we have wars, we have trade wars, we have inequalities, we have AI that is coming, that is going to shape and drive our future, but that is biased. We've discussed it at length, and we don't know how to fix the bias. We have migration, etc. So we have around us an environment that is extremely, extremely complicated. And what we know is that we have women, and we know that women empowerment can drive performance. So why would we not pay attention to this? And we know that we have to reinvent ourselves. We are at a moment where big companies like ours have to reinvent the way they operate, to reinvent their business model, and to imagine something that will be sustainable for the future. So it's clear that we cannot do this with the lessons of the past. We cannot do this with an army of clones. We need diverse talent. We need innovative solutions. So for me, we are really at a critical moment where, on the one hand, we have data, we have feedback from concrete experiences that demonstrate the value added that women empowerment can bring. And on the other hand, we have businesses that have now to take into consideration all of their stakeholders, to think broadly, and to reinvent the way they operate. So, as Christine Scott Thomas was saying, in a way, it's obvious. We have no choice. We have to do it. It's a business imperative, not only a moral imperative, but also a business imperative. And we have to do it with actions, as that's what we like, I think, with the women from Daring Circle. It's not about talking. It's not about thinking. Well, it's about talking and thinking, but not only. It's also about acting, and acting for empowering women in our workforce, with our talent, and also outside in the ecosystem that we have around the big companies. We've done a lot already in large companies for our talent. We know what to do. if I take an example at Publicis, we know that we have to focus where it's difficult. In creative teams, in technology teams, we know that we have a lot to do. We know that it's better if you create a link between the compensation of the executives and the diversity of the company. It motivates them. So we've done that. We know that we have regulation and that we can leverage regulation to change the behavior. If I give an example, in France we have an index on equal pay, and we are using this index to explain to our managers how to change the way they operate with women and men in their agencies. So all of this is great. And suddenly, you see this figure. You both quoted it. 35%, 1%. Wow. 35% of women-owned companies, 1% of spend for these companies. So here you start thinking, okay, good for my workforce, good for my talent, but I also have to take care of the other companies that are around us and see how we can act to empower women, not only in our big companies, but also outside.
Thank you very much. The stats are compelling, aren't they? And I want to just pick up on one of the other key points in the research, which is that there's a huge gap between Europe and the United States. So I want to talk about that with Ambassador Marinaki, because you are one of the European Union's main voices on gender equality and women's economic and political empowerment. It is clear from the Women's Forum research, though, that supply chain diversity needs some improvement here in Europe. Is there any reason to have hope that Europe can pick up the challenge and close that gap with the United States?
Well, I think it's a one-way street for us. I don't think we have many options. It's difficult to be the leading pioneer around the world on all issues that pertain to gender equality and women's empowerment. The European Union has assumed with a lot of pride and commitment this role. We will continue. Unfortunately, we feel quite lonely recently on this, but we will continue. And I feel that it is the moral responsibility, indeed, of the European Union as a moral compass worldwide in more than one ways, on human rights, on everything that pertains to our fundamental universal values that we need to defend and promote. So in this context, we have come to terms, and I feel this is a universal obligation to do with the fact that everything that has to do with gender dimension is here to stay. We have to restructure our societies. This is not an issue that we should deal with as a puzzle that we solve and we put aside. It is part and parcel of our present and definitely of our future. And it is in this context that in the framework of the European Union, we also take due consideration of all the elements that make us unique. And essentially, diversity is our strength. We have 28 different societies that come together willingly to make out of the 21 that is much stronger than each one of the 28 individually. And this is a major political commitment. And of course, we are ready to take it up. And also, we have a dual approach in dealing with all the issues that have to do with gender equality and how it is reflected and translated into our actions. We have decided and we have taken up steps to combat all forms of segregation. The horizontal segregation that prevents the career options and promotes the stereotypes, and the vertical segregation that prevents women from decision-making capacities. We know the statistics are dismal. We know that as it is still today, out of a total of 9.4 million managers in the European Union, 64% are men. It's less than 1 in 3 women. All of this has to change, but it has to change with a concrete logic that would feed into both the structures as well as the mentalities. And this is how we are taking up all the challenges that we need to deal with. We take gender equality, we take the pay gap, we take the work-life balance that is important to bring under one roof. We take the quotes of aiming for 40% of women in management boards that can make a lot of difference in the higher echelons of decision-making. And, of course, emphasis on mentoring, on the unconscious, conscious, unconscious biases, on the selection and on the chances. Awareness raising about harassment, all forms of harassment that have been plaguing our enterprises. And last but not least, of course, to take care of the spouses of the better halves so that each one of us would feel that our backs are covered in the very important caregiving capacity of our societies that has been often overlooked and needs to be into the main parcel if we want to make a real difference.
Ambassador, thank you for the comments. Now, Alessandro, I want to turn to you. You're a philanthropist, businessman, specialist at mission-driven strategies. So I'm curious how you see the situation around trying to ensure there is gender equality across supply chains and procurement.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. I want to talk about framework. So I won't totally answer your question. I hope it's fine. Because when we say on stage, we need to change what we see, right? I think I can see just so many women here saying, how can we empower more the women? And if I do think, if we don't force things, if we don't force people to do it, no one will do it. So if I'm talking about framework, is talking to just the ministers. So he left, but he has other things to do, I'm sure. But what is interesting is what happened in France in 2011. You know this law for the non-French people here called Copé-Zimmermann. What was it? It was talking about quota. So if I want to make some interaction with you guys, can you raise your hand if you believe quota is a good thing? What's interesting thing in Chiara, but it's interesting, if you look around you, not everyone believes so. I can tell you that the 40% that was in the law, 40% of people for the businesses in the Paris Stock Exchange should have, 40% of women should be just in the board level, 40%. Do you think 8 years after we'll be there without that law? The answer is no. So it's always interesting to understand why the women who haven't raised hands today. I don't get this. If we don't force things, do you think other people will let you in? Seriously? The answer is no. So what is interesting, and we discussed this with Anne-Gabrielle before, is not at the level of the exec. So if you talk to the exec committee, it's not there. We are not there. You take almost every single organization's, I'm only talking about the Paris Stock Exchange, it's the same everywhere. Another question for you, if we take the 57 CEOs or chair of the CAC 40, so the Paris top at the stock exchange, out of the 57, how many women? Close. No, 2. I think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but it should be 2. But it's, bad. What is interesting, that's in the business world. So yes, I'm so happy being here today with all of you. But talking is not changing things. We need to force, and to force things, we need to get this framework. The framework is clear. We need the people, the ministers. We need them in France. We need them almost everywhere. Because you know what? Iceland, Sweden, we're all there. But so many countries haven't done this yet. So that's the first thing we need to do. Right? I hope so. Yes? Yeah, please. So another thing, so I'm running EPIC. EPIC, we try to change the lives of the underserved. That's interesting for one reason. We are covering the world trying to find the really good social organizations. You know what? How many CEOs do you think? We have 28 organizations within the portfolio. So we're taking organizations, we are helping them to grow and to help the people just in need. That's interesting. More than 50% of the CEOs of the social organizations are women. But that's, you say bravo. It's not about this. Why in this world We believe women can be more effective when we're talking about social good. So I understand most of you are moms, or mothers, or women, you have something different from men. Still, when we're talking about just the tech world, let's take the tech world. Have you heard about Sista? Have you heard about this, the French one? So I just want to mention Sista. So in addition to what I do at Epic, I'm running a venture fund. And the venture fund, we signed this charter called Sista. What is Sista? Is empowering the women in the tech world. If I'm taking one number, I like this one. If you take, just in France, the 9 largest French investment fund have invested only 2.6, hear me well, 2.6% of their capital in companies founded or co-funded by women over the last 5 years. You will tell me it's still better than the global number because the global number is 2.2. So, hurrah, hurrah. I'm French, I'm happy. Still, we're not there. So there is this charter called Sista, led by amazing women, who said, we need to change this. And you know what? If we want to change this, we need to change the framework. If we don't change the framework, I will be so happy to come, and be invited by you, Chiara, here, but nothing will change. I can tell you this. If we want to change things, all of us, we need to step up. We need to voice over what we think is important. And what we think is important is a real equal world, because we're not in this world, and we need to be clear that's the only world we want to see in the future.
Alexandra, thank you. That moves us nicely into how we bring about change, and you mentioned quotas and finance. They're 2 big topics. So, and Gabrielle, do you want to weigh in on, first up, on quotas? Would quotas make a difference to bring about gender equality and supply chain?
Well, first, quotas. Quotas, it's a bit of a different question than supply chain, actually. But on quotas, I think that, like many of the people in the room, I wouldn't want to be called a quota. And at first, I was reluctant. And I think many of the women were. And now we see the figure, and I must agree with you, Alexandra, that it's impressive to see that France is leading the way in terms of percentage of women sitting on board, and that it's very likely because of the quota. So, should we continue in that direction? I don't know. It created a big impact, no doubt. Now, on supply chain, you could also use this type of prescriptive figure or etc.
50% has to be sourced from female-owned companies.
Yes, but we have to move in that direction, okay? And we have to move step by step and to do it in a smart manner. That's what I like really with the work that is being done and in which we are engaged. And what can be done is to source from women-owned business, but also to source from companies where they have high standards in terms of gender equity, and make sure that this is completely integrated in our process. So it means to open RFPs to women-led business. It means to sometimes train, mentor women-led business to make them understand how to enter into our big organizations, how to talk to us, how to understand our needs. So it's a lot of work, actually, if we want to do this well and in a sustainable manner. It's not about bringing a lot of companies year 1 and firing them year 2. I would like just to take one example to show that it works. And I think it was your company, P&G, who launched this initiative called Free the Bid. I don't know if people are familiar with Free the Bid, but we were the first holding company, Publicis, to join Free the Bid with some of our agencies, actually. And it's about, production work that is being done. So the rule is very simple. When you triple bid for a production, for a client, we pledge to include a woman, at least 1 out of 3. And we are doing it. And let me tell you that not only we are doing it at group level, but some of our agencies volunteered to commit and to do it. So this can make a big, big difference.
Ferris, do you want to come back in on this? Because as we talk about quotas, and it seems logical to say 50% sourcing from female-owned businesses, the statistics and the research you've done suggest, well, maybe that's not really going to be possible at this stage. There's been a lot of complaints from companies that do want to source from female suppliers that they simply do not exist, which sort of gets us back to the point when we've had this conversation before on women in leadership roles. Oh, there's just not the pool of talent for women to put them into top jobs. Is it the criteria that needs to change, or do we actually need a better system where there are enough female suppliers that can be contributing at this point?
You know, allow me, Karen, because I love what I heard from Anne-Gabrielle and Alexandre. You know, I would like to segregate the discussion or segment the discussion between what do we do internally, you know, as companies, as leaders within the company, what do we do as a community, and then, of course, I would like to come back to what should you do at a dating circle. First, as a company, you know, people don't like the word force, but by the end of the day, when we have hundreds of years of societies, which is male-dominant societies, coming in and say we're going to be changing by training only and advocating for it is going to take another 1,000 years, if it will ever happen. Hence, the starting point should be a declaration of intent connected with clear physical target and accountability to every leader at every level, okay? So within P&G, for instance, and I hope some of the audience here, you did not miss the Mark training, Men Advocating for Real Change. If you did, go back on the videotaping. Why I'm talking about this one? Because I'm going to converge to the supplier one. The issue is not about do we have good women, capable women, competent women. The issue about how much male are aware about their biases and how much of that bias is working against them. That's the starting point. That's the issue statement. The issue statement is the personal, you know, I'm a man. I learned over the years certain words to make me a man. But with time, and thanks to the P&G I belong to today, that I was one of the first pilot managers, I call it, okay, to go into the Mark training, for me to discover what I did not know. Those privileges that I have that my female colleague did not know. So the starting point, you have to force it. Force it, of course, you have to train, you have to engage, but you have to force it. Now, when we come back and do that, and what are the results in P&G? Today, we have 6 CEOs running 6 sectors, okay, in P&G, 3 female, 3 male. If I go all the way down to my organization, I have 45% about in my organization female, okay? Still, our objective is 50-50. Now, we do that internally. The next thing we say, okay, company which has brands, you know, I love the example you gave on what we try to do within the advertising, because if you think about it, only 7% who are shooting our copies are women. And we are the largest advertising company in the world. Okay, only 7% of the crew who stand behind the cameras, okay, or behind the script and so on are female. So going back to the supplier, first you make awareness. So part of this maturity model is start with the starting point, because my buyer do not know how many female, you know, owned businesses there. So the first thing is create the tool. Okay, that's the model. And then the second thing is hold accountable that any bidding, any process, they need to do the due diligence where either led by a woman, so they have 50-50 opportunity, or they do good thing from a citizenship about gender equality. Right. So that is what we're trying to do.
The execution is quite important, isn't it, Alexandre? I was talking to European operation Coca-Cola European partners, and they were saying they went back over their supply chain too, and they looked at some of the problems that existed in it. And one of the issues was where it was housed. It was in logistics and supply chain, which is mainly run by men. So they moved it to the finance department. Then they put a whole sourcing team that was women. So when women came in, they felt more comfortable. So just talk us through execution from a ground-up point of view, where it's important for women to feel comfortable, to be brought into the system, to have the right networks, the right opportunities.
And if I may again, so talking about supply chain, I want just to talk about Darwin. If you all remember just Darwin, it was explained something very clear. The people, or the species, will be surviving, or not the biggest one, or the toughest one, will be the one who will be able to adapt themselves. The reason why maybe we'll see things changing is because people, I mean, just people who are running this world, the business leaders, they have understood that if they really want to survive, they will need to adapt themselves. What we understand, and this is very interesting what you were saying just Faris about just P&G, we see more and more businesses understanding that they have to evolve, change, for 3 reasons. The first reason is it's a very important reason. We won't work, we will stop working for organizations that's not putting purpose at the core of the organization. And then we see this, just my generation, I can tell you that 20 years ago, 25 years ago, after college, was even not the question. The question was the size of the car I will get, the title on my business card, the fact that I will be by myself in the office. This new generation, the millennials, are pushing everyone to think differently. That's the first reason. Second reason, it's even more important for business leaders. We are consumers. We're customers. So I will stop buying, and I'm sure it's the same for most of you. You will stop buying product coming from brands that won't connect with us. So it could be just about the supply chain or so many good reasons to stop buying. And the third reason is a very important reason as well, is the connection we want to see have with our kids. So many times I have people coming over saying, my daughter is 20, my son is 22, and they are different. Oh yes, they are different. And if we still want to connect with them, we need to understand something. And we cannot keep talking to them about the growth of the business or that we have opened 6 more offices. They don't care.
Right.
So that's the thing, what we see. We have this power, and this power has to be used because then a lot more people will understand that and that's what we call ESG. ESG, just when we talk about diversity, when we talk about just equality, is very important topics will go into the ESG. So that's really just where we're going.
And this came out in the research report that ESG was one of the factors for change. Ambassador, I want to bring it back to your level, as you've heard the discussion at the corporate level. What is the role at the EU level at this point? And we've spoken about some tech bias that could come into the system around sourcing, decision-making, or around financing. What's the challenge from where you sit to try and bring about change? What can you do to make a difference?
Well, I feel that essentially we are all part of the solution, and we see our strongest partner to be in the private sector. We feel that these public-private partnerships are the ones that can make the real difference. And I would like to add my voice of strong advocacy for quotas. I feel that quotas can make the difference in the sense it's after a ski accident. You're struck with a sprained ankle and you cannot walk, you need crutches. The quotas are the crutches. They provide you the ability to start walking, not fast, but still you're not stuck in your chair. And once you are able to stand and start walking, it's only a matter of time to get back to what should be the natural process of doing things. And it is in this context, I'm glad that we all agree on that. It is in this process that all of us can make a difference, that once we take something like a medicine, we know it's good for our health, we don't like it, but we will take it. And at some point, once we feel better, then we don't even think about it twice. Okay, so in this sense, we join efforts with the private sector. We bring all the good elements from the public and the private, and we take up all the weaknesses and make strength out of them. And once we do that together and we bring the agility that the private sector can bring into the decision maker, into the decision making, we also become better, and then this affects the whole of the society.
You want to say something quickly before we do our call to action?
It was about the call to action. So.
Okay, well, let's do our call to action because it's very important. Do you want to start first up?
Okay, thank you. So something I wanted to share actually with this audience is that because we hear a lot about, private sector and public sector and action and bias, etc., at some stage we felt at the Women Forum that we needed to build a tool to be able to assess and screen deeply the gap between the reality of women's role and the perception. And we are going to launch this next year, so it will be a Women's Forum barometer, and it will enable us to identify the gaps and to focus our action on these gaps.
Okay, Ferris, you've got 3 seconds. Call to action.
Well, listen, the maturity model, leverage it. We need to start, we need to assess. That's the journey.
That's
and
3
the
seconds.
second one, public sector need to step up. That's key along with the private sector.
Ambassador, 3 seconds.
3 seconds. We have promised, in the context of the European Union, at least internally, to reach 40% of women in management. We have managed to have it. So it's a done deal.
Alexandra?
Yeah, so I think everything you just said, plus I think investing in women is not only the right thing to do, is the smart thing to do.
Thank you so much to our panel. We've very much enjoyed the conversation.